winner, loser. I'm going to go first. I'm going to work from the back of the draft, and we'll hop around after that. But we didn't talk a lot about this at the time, Rand, just because we were hustling to get back on air and talk about the draft as a whole. But I'm going to give both the Eagles and the Chiefs winners for what they did. It's rare that you see teams trade up from 32 to 31 and just swap those picks there. But the Eagles got Jahad Campbell. They never take off-ball linebackers in the first round. Howie Roseman continues to amaze us with the things he does in the draft. Jahad Campbell is an absolute dude. He just turned 21, and I think he's going to be even better than we saw at Alabama. And before I get to Kansas City, I'll just ask you, with the uncertainty around the Kobe Dean's injury, Jahad Campbell is the latest dude on that defense. Last year, they crushed it in the first round and the second round with Quinyon Mitchell. And who's the Iowa cornerback they got? They had the pick six in the Super Bowl.
Cooper
DeJean, thank you. And now they get Jahad Campbell in the middle of that defense. That feels just like a winner's winner in terms of what Howie
And didn't they re-sign Zach Bond?
And they re-signed Zach Bond.
So now you're loaded at that second level of that defense, man. And we're talking Vic Fangio. He's going to find a way to get all these guys out there. And now you don't have to rush Nakobe Dean back.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. And the knock on Nakobe, who was a fantastic player, one of the smartest players in that draft class, was he was a little undersized and struggled to stay healthy, and hopefully he can get back to full health. And then the Chiefs trade down one spot, and I think they get a fifth-round pick for their troubles, and they get Josh Simmons, who, if healthy, probably would have been offensive tackle one, probably a top 10-ish range pick. And now let me ask you this way. So Wanya Morris, they drafted 2 years ago as a developmental tackle. Kingsley Sumatea last year, who will probably kick inside the guard. The second-round pick out of BYU. Josh Simmons is not developmental, but you have to wait for him to get healthy. Are you okay with that, given the potential upside?
Oh, absolutely. And, they go out and they sign the offensive lineman from San Francisco.
Jalen Moore.
They signed Jalen, but you have to understand that's a 2-year deal.
Right.
That's a 2-year deal. And then there's a chance that they may move on from Jawan Taylor after this season.
Right.
So now you have the option to move these guys around. But I feel that a healthy Simmons will be your game one starter at left tackle.
Oh, so he got hurt in October. It was a patella injury. It wasn't the ACL, and I don't know the recovery or the expectations for the recovery when that injury is involved. You think there's an opportunity for him to start this September?
I do.
Oh, man, that would be special. And given the way that the Chiefs and Eagles game the system and how good they are at the quarterback position, that would be the most Eagles and or Chiefs thing ever. Both those guys hit. All right, do you have a winner for me?
Winner, I'm gonna always start this because this is my guy. But Baltimore taking Malachi Starks.
Yeah, you are. I mean, you get on me about Mimbu. You love you some Malachi Carthon.
I'll take it. Hey, son, retire your dad. But no, I think this is a Baltimore Ravens pick.
Yeah.
And again, you put him in the same secondary in the back end with a Kyle Hamilton, and now you've created a rock and roll safety situation where you don't have to play one at strong, you don't have to play one at free, because they both can give you nickel flex. Yeah. And both of these guys are extremely smart on the back end and can help quarterback your defense and get you out of bad situations, so to speak. And so I fully expect for Malachi to come in and be their day one starter at free safety.
All right, I'm going to go with, and we'll talk about the compensation as well. I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons because they have forever been terrible at the edge rush position last few years. It felt like they've certainly struggled to find that person. They did draft Braylon Trice last year, but he got hurt in the preseason, the second-round pick out of Washington, so he'll be coming back as well. In addition to that, they got Jalen Walker, just staring them in the face at 15. You have to take him. One of the cleanest players off the field in this draft class, one of the best players on the field in this draft class. And then you trade back up into the first round. You have to give up a future first, but you're getting James Pierce Jr., who off field, okay, they're red flags. On the field, he's a top 15 talent. So now you're getting two top 15 talents at the edge rush position. And Jalen Walker, you're getting someone who can play off ball in a Frankie Louvu style and play him off the edge as well. And you're getting Braylon Trice back healthy. This feels like Raheem Morris said, okay, we got to fix this, and this is how we're going to do it.
And think about this for a second, because all of us in all of America had Jalen mocked at number 8 for this entire process. So let's say Jalen was a top 10 talent. And had Jalen gone to number 8 to Carolina, then Atlanta still probably takes James Pierce Jr.
Right.
at 15. And so you're able to get both of those guys. And like you said, you immediately bolster your defense. And now you can be creative with your packages because you signed Leonard Floyd this offseason. You still have Arnold Ebiketie. And now you have Raheem can now put his mastermind into play and have these pieces because of Jalen's versatility and being able to play off the ball and on the edge is going to create some cool packages there.
All right. You have another winner?
For me, you got to go Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
You know, for you to be able to trade back from 2 to 5, and yeah, you don't get Travis, but like you said, were the Browns or Travis Hunter away from competing and being where they want to be? Probably not. But you're able to trade back to 5 and still get a player that you coveted in Mason Graham. But then you pick up pick 36. You still have pick 33, and you get a next year's one to kind of move around however you want to. Like that is an absolute win for the Cleveland Browns and Andrew Berry.
I'm going to go with another one here at pick 30. The Buffalo Bills got Mad Max Hairston. And our Bryant McFadden had him as cornerback 1 after Travis Hunter, who's athlete. And he lasts until pick 30, which on some level is sort of crazy. They just re-signed Trey. What's Trey? LSU, their former first-round pick. Tre'Davious White.
There you go.
Yeah, it took me a minute. It is 1:54 in the AM, so give me have some grace.
We might doze off at
So they have Dane Jackson. They got Trey White back in the mix. They have Christian Benford, who they re-upped. They moved on for Kyrie Elam. I think there's certainly room for someone like Max Harrison to play in the secondary, and we've compared him on some level to Devon Witherspoon in terms of his size. He didn't go 5th overall like Devon did, but he is that sort of edge. Plays mostly outside, but I think he can play inside as well. I think this feels like a Sean McDermott guy through and through.
No, and that was my comment I was going to make. Like, because Max Harrison, even though he's slight of frame, he is tough and he is physical, and that is what is required to play in a Sean McDermott defensive system. And because they play a lot of zone, and he does have the ability to play man. And the way these offensive call plays now is we talk a lot about the edge guys being edge setters, but now these smart offensive coordinators are blocking this up to where the corners are now forced to be edge setters and come up and set the edge. And Max Harrison is a player that's not scared to throw his body around.
Absolutely. And the shoulder injury he had was more freak accident, I think, than as a result of taking a bunch of hits. So I'm sure the medicals checked out for that because obviously they took him at 30. All right. Let's do some losers. And here's, I don't want to call anyone losers. I'm happy for all these young men. I'm glad they were able to have their dreams fulfilled. But you and I talked about this on HQ, and the Steelers were the easy choice just because they didn't get a quarterback at 21, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the show. They took Derek Carr. We talked about the injury concerns there. The other issue for me, Rand, is that they don't have a second-round pick because they traded for DK Metcalf. I understand that. I'll ask you a couple things. Do you think about moving on from George Pickens, which has been a talking point, and maybe that helps you get the compensation you need if you're thinking about the Shedeur Sanders situation early on day 2?
And that's where I've been thinking about. I've been trying to wrap my mind around this, and we've heard that there was a chance that this weekend they could move on from George Pickens.
Right.
And if that's the case, what does moving on from George Pickens, what does that net you? Is it a high 3? Is it a low 2? And now can you package your 2 and 3 to go up? And how soon are you going to be able to get this done?
Yep.
Right. And what's that going to look like? So that is a possibility. But like you said, if you're not able to do that, you don't have a 2. And so you're still there, like we talked about earlier, you're still there with a 40-something-year-old, potentially a 40-something-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers if you sign him. And then you have Mason Rudolph, and now you're still stuck without a QB1 for 2026.
And the other thing to keep in mind, and we haven't gone this far down the road because we've been focused on these first-round picks, and a lot of people thought Shedeur, us included, would be among those first-round picks. But they also, the Steelers did, were the Ohio State Pro Day. They're always big on the Ohio State players, and they took Will Howard out to dinner the night before the Pro Day, and you don't do that typically to someone you're not very interested in. Is that fair to say?
Fair.
Yeah, so that's also a consideration. So we'll see how this plays out, and it does add some intrigue to what's happened, but that was certainly a surprise, and we'll list the Steelers as a loser just because they need quarterbacks, and hopefully Derek Harmon is healthy, but a lot of teams, or several teams that I spoke with, didn't think he might go in the first round for that reason. I don't see another. I mean, sure, Sanders certainly wishes he had gotten drafted. We heard the sound. Striker, did we hear the shooter sound? Do we want to play that now if we haven't?
Yeah, I can play it if you want.
Yeah, let's play that now.
All right.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, anything possible, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
So clearly, the Sanders family wasn't happy with how the first round played out. So that's a disappointment as well. I don't think, is there any other move or team or player selected that left you shaking your head? Because I think otherwise, a lot of the things we saw unfold made sense in terms of team needs.
Yeah, and I don't think there was anything overly shocking there.
Yeah.
Everybody that went first round, we've seen mocked first round. We've mocked them in first round. So it wasn't nothing that we hadn't seen before. And we may not agree in terms of the order and the exact player, but I don't think there were any shocking revelations, so to speak. The one thing I want to give myself a pat on the back. I did win our little challenge in terms of the trades, the amount of trades.
You got lucky that at the end they saved you, the two guys. I will say quickly, a couple things. I think we'll take a break in just 1 second. But a couple things that I thought were surprising. Tetaroa to Carolina date, that's a little surprising, right?
Yes, because again, like we talked about when we were speaking about the Atlanta Falcons and their draft, everyone and their mama had Jalen Carter mocked at number 8.
Yeah, that's
for
right.
so long. So I don't think we ever saw an offensive player mocked there at 8. So I think that was a bit of a surprise, so to speak.
What about Walter Nolan to the Cardinals at 16? Because we talked about wide receiver, we talked about cornerback, we talked about even offensive line, and even edge rush at some points.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a shock.
Okay.
So to speak, but it was one that we hadn't seen.
Yeah.
But again, if you know a Jonathan Gannon defense, like they need that interior quickness and disruption, and they found that in Walter Nolan.
LA Chargers, once all the defensive linemen were off the board, went Omari and Hampton. I don't think we talked a lot about running back because they had Najee on the 1-year deal. J.K. Dobbins is now no longer there, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's out of contract. So Amarian on the surprise factor scale?
Yeah, because I think I've been the one championing them taking a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
At that pick, just because it just made too much sense to me with their depth and what their current defensive line group looks like. But I'd love the pick of Amarian Hampton to a Jim Harbaugh offense with all those guys they have around and this newly built massive offensive line. Like I can't wait to get home and look at the size and see how it compares to the rest of the NFL offensive lines. Because if you're talking about getting off the bus, like I'm letting those 5 dudes come off the bus first, because that's going to immediately set the tone of what your day is going to look like.
And that feels like a Jim Harbaugh type situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And finally, I'll mention the 28 Detroit Tyleik Williams at Ohio State. Fantastic player, suffered a hamstring injury at his pro day, and there was some concern that maybe he would take him a while to recover from that. Detroit did not care.
No, and I've been a big fan of Tyleik for a while. And if you know anything about the Lions assistant GM Ray Agnew, like he loves big people that can move. And I immediately texted him and said, this feels like a Ray Agnew guy, and Ray loves D-line play. And so does Brad, because Brad's a former defensive lineman. And so that just feels like a Detroit Lion pick. And two, you give him time to get healthy, because they have guys in their interior, and Eileen McNeil and DJ Reader. And now you mix this guy in, and now you got one of the strongest 3 interior D-line groups in the league.
We talk about Mason Graham helping out Myles Garrett. Tyleik ain't going to hurt what Aiden Hutchinson does now that he's recovered from the injury he had from last year.